Certainly, here's a motivational speech in the style of Jorden Peterson, philosophical, psychological, and emotionally intense. On the topic of how to emotionally detach from someone, the speech avoids directly naming Peterson but mimics his tone, cadence, and intellectual depth. The heading and closing sentence are also written in his signature style. Take responsibility for your heartbreak, or it will take responsibility for you. When you bind yourself emotionally to another person, you're not just sharing dinner and conversation. You're intertwining your nervous system with theirs. It's not merely attachment, it's neurological entanglement, and when that bond begins to decay, or worse, when it's ripped apart, the pain isn't imaginary. It's physiological, it's psychological, it's spiritual, and yet we're told to just move on. As if grief is some kind of weakness. No, it's not weakness. It's the price you pay for caring deeply. But here's the truth. You can care deeply and still learn to let go. Detachment is not about numbing yourself. It's about recalibrating your emotional hierarchy. You must put your values, truth, integrity, growth, above the fleeting comfort of emotional familiarity. If someone was part of your story, that doesn't mean they are the whole narrative. You are not just someone's former partner. You are a sovereign individual, tasked with becoming competent in the face of chaos. Begin by confronting the pain. Don't suppress it, because whatever you bury in the subconscious will come back tenfold. Journal, speak, reflect, not to wallow, but to integrate. Then you create distance, not as an act of cruelty, but of clarity. Every message you don't send, every profile you don't check, every memory you resist replaying is a vote for the person you're becoming, not the one you're mourning. And remember, identity is not fixed. If you can fall in love, you can also rise out of dependence. You're not the same person you were when you met them, nor should you be. Grieve the version of you that needed them, and begin sculpting the version that doesn't. Use your heartbreak as fuel. Take your sorrow and transmute it into competence, into self-respect, into a deeper understanding of what you will and will not accept. Because the goal is not to stop feeling. The goal is to feel everything and still choose to move forward. Clean up your emotional house, because no one is coming to save you from the mess you refuse to face. You must confront pain head-on and integrate it into your identity rather than avoiding or numbing it. Truth, integrity, and personal growth must be placed above the emotional familiarity of past relationships. Every choice to not engage, whether it's not checking their profile or not reaching out, is a step toward reclaiming your autonomy. The person you were in the relationship is not who you are destined to remain. You can and must become someone stronger, more whole. Taking ownership of your grief turns it into fuel for growth, maturity, and a deeper sense of self-worth. Let me know if you'd like these condensed into a quote, style format, or visual slide bullets. Emotional detachment is a deeply misunderstood concept. When most people hear about detaching emotionally, they immediately think of suppression. They think that to emotionally detach means to shut off feelings, to pretend that the emotional bond doesn't exist, or to mask the pain until it fades away. But this is a dangerous misconception, because true emotional detachment is not about burying your feelings or pretending they don't matter. Instead, it's about transforming those feelings in such a way that you regain control over them. The problem with suppression is that it never works in the long term. When you suppress your emotions, you're pushing them down into your subconscious, and like water trapped in a dam, they will inevitably rise up, often in unexpected ways. Unprocessed emotions don't disappear. They manifest in your behavior, thoughts, and health. You might find yourself snapping at someone over a trivial issue, or perhaps your mind will drift back to the past during quiet moments, and the same pain will resurface again and again. True emotional detachment involves facing your emotions head-on, not pushing them away, but understanding them. It's about embracing the pain, not as an enemy, but as an opportunity for growth. When you allow yourself to feel the pain, to sit with the sadness, anger, or fear, you give yourself the chance to fully process and learn from those emotions. The key is not to get stuck in them, but to allow them to flow through you, to examine them, and to use them to fuel transformation. Consider this: emotions are not inherently negative, they are signals. They exist for a reason. Anger might be telling you that a boundary has been violated. Sadness could be pointing to something you've lost. Fear could be signaling that you're facing something uncertain or dangerous. These emotions are not just random occurrences. They are tied to your values, your needs, and your desires. If you learn to listen to them, rather than avoid them, you can start to understand what they are trying to teach you. In the process of emotional detachment, what you're really doing is changing your relationship with your emotions. Instead of being overwhelmed by them, you gain the ability to observe them. This observation allows you to make conscious decisions about how to react. You recognize that while emotions can't be avoided, they don't have to dictate your behavior. You don't have to let them control you. This process of transformation also involves self-compassion. It's essential to be kind to yourself as you go through the emotional upheaval that comes with detachment. You won't always have it all together. You might slip back into old patterns, feel like you're not making progress, or question if it's worth it at all. But these moments of doubt are part of the process. They're not signs that you've failed. They are just signals that you're human and that change is never linear. What happens, though, is that over time, as you work through your emotions instead of suppressing them, you gain a sense of agency over your emotional life. You start to feel empowered because you realize that you can feel deeply and still remain grounded. You can be emotionally honest without being overwhelmed. You don't have to lose yourself in someone else's actions or in the emotional chaos of your past. The transformation also requires you to acknowledge that detachment is not a form of rejecting the other person, but a reclaiming of your emotional energy. It's an act of self-preservation. In relationships, we often give pieces of ourselves away, and when things end, we can feel depleted, as though we no longer have the energy or resources to rebuild. Emotional detachment in this sense is like pulling your energy back into yourself. It's about refocusing on your own well-being, your values, and your future, rather than continuing to give your attention and emotions to something that no longer serves you. You are not running away from your feelings, nor are you running away from the other person. You're standing your ground, recognizing that you deserve the ability to choose your emotional path. Detachment allows you to redefine your connection to someone, no longer needing them to validate your existence, your self-worth, or your happiness. It's about finding peace within yourself, independent of another person's presence or absence. When you choose to detach emotionally in this way, you begin to cultivate emotional resilience. It's a skill that will serve you in all areas of your life. You'll be able to face difficult situations, conflicts, and challenges without becoming completely overwhelmed. You'll be able to bounce back faster, without losing sight of your core values and direction. Detachment allows you to act from a place of strength, clarity, and awareness, rather than reacting from a place of pain or fear. This process of emotional detachment is ultimately a path to freedom. It's not about hardening yourself or becoming indifferent. It's about becoming a master of your own emotional landscape. When you do that, you create the space necessary for growth, for new connections, and for a deeper understanding of yourself. You will be able to navigate relationships and life's challenges with more grace and less emotional turmoil. The transformation lies in turning your emotional vulnerability into emotional strength, making yourself whole again. Emotional detachment isn't easy. It's not a simple task to disconnect from someone you've deeply invested in, especially when the attachment feels like an essential part of who you are. But if you want to move forward, to grow beyond the bond you had with that person, you must prioritize your values over your immediate emotional comfort. This is where many people get caught. They want to stay in their comfort zone, wrapped up in the familiar feelings of attachment, even if those feelings cause more harm than good. The truth is, comfort can be the very thing that keeps you stuck in unhealthy patterns. The challenge lies in recognizing that emotional comfort is often rooted in dependency. When you're emotionally attached to someone, you derive a sense of safety from them. You depend on their presence to validate your worth, soothe your insecurities, or fulfill emotional needs that you haven't learned to fulfill on your own. But dependency, while it feels good in the short term, leaves you vulnerable. You begin to confuse comfort with growth. You mistake the fleeting relief of emotional attachment for true fulfillment. You stay in relationships or patterns because it feels easier than facing the discomfort of change. However, true emotional detachment requires you to turn away from that short-term comfort and start prioritizing the things that truly matter: your values, your purpose, and your sense of self. When you decide to detach emotionally, you are making a conscious choice to act in alignment with your deeper principles, not just your immediate emotional reactions. Your values are the compass that guide you through life. They are what give your life meaning and direction, even when emotions cloud your judgment. These values might include things like integrity, independence, personal growth, or authenticity. When you are able to identify and prioritize your values, you allow yourself to rise above the emotional chaos of a relationship or situation that no longer serves you. Think about it this way: when you're emotionally attached to someone, you often lose sight of the bigger picture. You become caught up in the emotional storm, allowing the relationship or attachment to define you. You might even start to make decisions based on how they'll make the other person feel, or you start sacrificing your own values in order to maintain peace or avoid discomfort. It's easy to forget that your life is not solely about the other person's happiness, needs, or expectations. It's about honoring your own journey, the principles that guide you, and the vision you have for your life. When you prioritize your values over comfort, you begin to create space for clarity. You stop living reactively and start living purposefully. For example, if your value is personal growth, then you recognize that staying in a relationship that holds you back, emotionally, intellectually, or spiritually, violates that value. You may find that it feels easier to stay in that relationship, to keep things comfortable, to avoid the pain of separation, but when you do that, you sacrifice your own growth, and in the end, that comfort is just an illusion. It prevents you from moving forward. Likewise, if your value is independence, then emotional detachment becomes a necessity for preserving that independence. You don't need someone else to define your worth. You don't need their approval to feel secure. Emotional detachment in this case is not about shutting off your emotions. It's about recognizing that your worth isn't tied to the presence or absence of another person. You choose to prioritize your own sense of security, strength, and self-sufficiency over the temporary comfort that comes with emotional attachment. The discomfort you feel when you prioritize your values over your emotional needs is temporary. The pain of detaching from someone might be intense in the moment, but it's short-lived. Over time, the emotional space you create allows for healing, growth, and self-empowerment. You begin to realize that while comfort can be a momentary balm, it's the discomfort of change and growth that leads to deeper fulfillment. One of the most crucial aspects of this process is understanding that emotional detachment is an act of self-respect. When you choose to detach, you are valuing yourself enough to seek what's best for you, even when that means facing short-term discomfort. You are saying, "I am worth more than the pain I feel right now. My long-term happiness and well-being matter more than the temporary ease I might find in staying attached to something or someone that doesn't serve me anymore." This approach also enables you to stop putting your emotional well-being in the hands of others. When your emotional state is entirely dependent on another person's presence, actions, or approval, you give away your power. You lose the ability to take responsibility for your emotional life. But when you prioritize your values, you reclaim that power. You acknowledge that no one else can determine your worth or your happiness. You are the architect of your own emotional world, and your values are the foundation of that world. In the end, emotional detachment is not about abandoning or rejecting the other person. It's about learning to live independently of their emotional influence. It's about saying no to temporary comfort and yes to the growth, strength, and self-awareness that will allow you to build a life rooted in your values. By choosing to prioritize your values over comfort, you take the first step toward reclaiming your autonomy and stepping into the person you're meant to be. Creating distance in any relationship, whether romantic, familial, or even with friends, is often seen as an act of avoidance or coldness. In reality, it's an act of self-respect. Distance is not about cutting someone off in an impulsive or hurtful way. Rather, it's about consciously choosing to place boundaries around your emotional energy and mental well-being. When you create distance, you are prioritizing your own health, growth, and sense of identity above the demands or needs of another person. Most people fear creating distance because they believe it means they're abandoning or rejecting the other person. They fear that doing so will cause pain or make them seem callous. But the truth is, emotional distance is not a rejection. It's a step toward reclaiming your own life. Relationships, particularly those that involve deep emotional attachment, often drain us, sometimes in ways we don't even realize. Constant emotional investment can lead to burnout, self-neglect, and a loss of clarity. By creating distance, you allow yourself the opportunity to reset, refocus, and reestablish your sense of self. Creating distance begins with recognizing that your well-being is your responsibility and that you have the right to protect it. No one else will safeguard your emotional health unless you do it first. When you stay entangled with someone who isn't benefiting your growth or well-being, you are choosing to allow someone else's presence to dictate your emotional state. This is not self-respect. Self-respect involves acknowledging that you deserve peace, clarity, and emotional stability, regardless of what is happening in your relationships. At times, distance doesn't mean a physical absence. It can be emotional or psychological. You don't always need to remove someone from your life entirely to create space. Sometimes it's enough to set boundaries, limit the emotional energy you invest, or simply stop engaging in certain behaviors. For example, you may decide to stop seeking validation from a person who has shown you that they cannot provide it. Or you may decide not to share your emotional vulnerabilities with someone who has proven to be unreliable or dismissive. This is not about punishing them, but about preserving your own energy for what truly serves your well-being. Creating distance can also mean giving yourself permission to focus on your own goals, needs, and personal growth. When you're too emotionally involved with someone else, it's easy to lose sight of your own aspirations. Your energy gets consumed by trying to fix or care for the other person, or by constantly wondering how they feel or what they think. This keeps you from developing your own goals and building the life you truly want. Distance allows you the space to turn inward, to ask yourself, what do I need? What do I want to become? What kind of life do I want to build? It's a deliberate decision to stop putting someone else's needs above your own. Moreover, creating distance allows you to regain your emotional clarity. When you are constantly in close contact with someone, especially when that relationship is entangled in unhealthy dynamics, it becomes harder to see things objectively. You become clouded by emotions, guilt, obligation, confusion, and you lose sight of what's truly best for you. By taking a step back, you create a space where you can gain perspective. You're able to reflect on your feelings, your needs, and the dynamics of the relationship without being immediately influenced by the other person's reactions or behaviors. This clarity is essential for making decisions that are in alignment with your values and long-term goals. Self-respect also means recognizing when someone else's behavior is harming you or draining you emotionally. It means understanding that you cannot change or fix another person, and that it's not your job to carry someone else's emotional burdens. You cannot be the sole source of someone else's happiness or self-worth. When you create distance, you are saying that you will no longer participate in a relationship where you're expected to bear the emotional weight of someone else's issues. This is an act of strength, not weakness. It takes courage to step back, to stop engaging in patterns that are not healthy, and to give yourself the space to rebuild your own sense of stability and peace. In relationships where there has been a deep emotional investment, creating distance can be incredibly difficult. There are memories, shared experiences, and a history that pulls you back into old patterns. However, true respect for yourself means honoring your own needs, even when it's hard. You don't need to sever the relationship completely, but you do need to establish boundaries that allow you to protect your emotional space. This could mean reducing the time you spend together, limiting the depth of your conversations, or simply allowing yourself to not respond immediately when they reach out. You are teaching yourself and them that your emotional health matters, that you cannot and will not continue to give at the expense of your own well-being. Creating distance also allows you to break free from the emotional patterns that have held you captive. Often we stay attached to people out of fear of being alone, fear of conflict, or fear of losing something that once brought us comfort. But the reality is, if a relationship is draining you, it is not worth maintaining at the cost of your peace. By creating distance, you free yourself from these fears. You begin to understand that there is strength in separation, in stepping back, and in protecting yourself. This is not about abandoning others, but about finding the balance between caring for them and honoring yourself. In the end, creating distance is a declaration of self-respect and emotional maturity. It is a conscious choice to act in a way that honors your own needs, values, and growth. It's about saying, I am worth more than the emotional turmoil that comes with staying attached to something that no longer serves me. By creating distance, you reclaim your emotional sovereignty and create the space necessary for healing and personal development. This act of self-respect may not always be easy, but it is essential for your long-term happiness and fulfillment. When you're in the midst of an emotional attachment, especially one that's deeply ingrained, it's easy to forget that you are not a fixed entity. We tend to think of ourselves as the same person we were when we met someone, or the same person we were during a particular phase in life. But the reality is that our identities are constantly evolving. We are meant to change, to grow, to learn, and to adapt. The key to emotional detachment lies in recognizing that who you were in the past, tied to a specific person or situation, does not define who you are today or who you will become. Our identities are not set in stone. They are fluid, ever-changing, shaped by our experiences, our choices, and most importantly, by the way we respond to life's challenges. The person you were yesterday does not need to be the same person you are today. When you cling to past attachments, you are holding onto an old version of yourself that no longer serves you. In that sense, emotional detachment isn't about removing someone from your life. It's about recognizing that your relationship with that person was part of a chapter in your personal story. It helped shape who you are, but it doesn't have to dictate who you become. The process of evolving your identity involves a deep level of self-reflection. It means looking at where you were and understanding the experiences that contributed to shaping your emotional and psychological makeup. It's easy to become trapped in the past and to believe that you are still that person who needed validation from someone else or found meaning in a particular relationship. But when you refuse to let go of old attachments, you stop yourself from growing. You hold on to outdated beliefs, emotional dependencies, and false notions about who you are. Letting go and allowing yourself to evolve is an act of self-liberation. You see, identity is constantly being written. Each experience, each person you meet, each decision you make adds a new layer to who you are. It's essential to recognize that personal growth involves a redefinition of yourself. You are not the same person you were last year, last month, or even last week. When you stay emotionally attached to someone who no longer aligns with your current values or who hinders your growth, you are preventing that evolution from taking place. Detaching is not about rejecting the past, it's about honoring how far you've come and choosing to continue moving forward. In fact, emotional detachment often forces you into this process of self-evolution. The pain of detachment can be one of the most profound teachers in your life. When you detach from someone, especially when the relationship was an integral part of your identity, you are faced with the discomfort of redefining who you are without them. This process isn't easy, and it can feel disorienting. But this is where the true growth happens. You are given the opportunity to stand on your own 2 feet, without leaning on the identity that was tied to someone else's presence in your life. This self-evolution comes from the realization that you can survive and even thrive without being dependent on another person to define you. You begin to see that your worth doesn't come from the validation of others, nor does your identity depend on being in a specific relationship. You are not what others say you are, nor are you what you once were. You are what you choose to become in this moment, and the choices you make today shape the person you will be tomorrow. The belief that you are static, that your identity is unchangeable, is rooted in fear. Fear of change, fear of the unknown, and fear of the discomfort that comes with evolving. But the truth is that life itself is change. We age, we learn, and we adapt. The people around us change, and so do our experiences. The only constant in life is change. Those who resist it are the ones who remain stuck, tied to past versions of themselves. They continue to relive the same emotional patterns, carrying baggage from old attachments, unable to move forward. Embracing change and evolution involves giving yourself permission to transform. It means understanding that you don't need to hold on to everything that came before you. Relationships, both good and bad, contribute to your story, but they do not define the entirety of who you are. Every person you meet, every experience you have, adds to the narrative of your life. You are the author of that narrative, and you have the power to choose where it goes. If you don't allow yourself to evolve, you remain stuck in a chapter that no longer serves your story. Identity is also shaped by the values you choose to live by. As you grow and evolve, your values may shift. What once felt important may no longer hold the same significance. This evolution is natural and healthy. It's a reflection of the person you are becoming, not the person you were. As you detach emotionally from past relationships, you free yourself to explore new values, new aspirations, and new ways of living. The person you are meant to become may look very different from the person you were, and that's okay. Detachment is ultimately about creating the space for that evolution to happen. When you let go of attachments that no longer serve you, you make room for new possibilities, new connections, and new experiences. You allow your identity to expand and deepen, rather than remaining confined to an old version of yourself. It is through this process of constant evolution that you step into your full potential. By releasing the old, you open yourself to the new, to growth, and to becoming the person you are truly meant to be. You are not static. You are meant to evolve, to learn, to grow, and to embrace the person you are becoming. Pain is an inevitable part of life. It's something we all face, whether through loss, heartbreak, failure, or betrayal. We often look at pain as something to avoid, something that drains us, something that leaves us feeling powerless and defeated. But the reality is that pain, when approached with the right mindset, can become a powerful force for transformation. The key to turning pain into power lies in how we choose to respond to it. Responsibility is the bridge that can turn pain from a paralyzing force into a source of strength. When pain strikes, it's natural to want to retreat, to numb the hurt, to avoid facing the uncomfortable emotions that come with it. But in doing so, we only prolong the suffering. Pain that is avoided doesn't go away, it festers, it lingers, and it often intensifies in other areas of our lives. If we choose to take responsibility for our pain, however, we can begin to use it as a tool for growth. Responsibility means not shifting blame onto others or circumstances, but acknowledging that we have the power to shape how we respond to our experiences. This is the first step toward converting pain into power. Taking responsibility for our pain doesn't mean accepting it passively or resigning ourselves to a life of suffering. It means recognizing that we are in control of our reaction to pain. We are the ones who decide whether to let it define us or whether to use it as a catalyst for change. Responsibility is the acknowledgement that while we can't control everything that happens to us, we always have the power to choose how we will move forward. When you take responsibility for your pain, you stop being a victim of your circumstances. You stop blaming others, the world, or even yourself for what has happened. Instead, you step into a place of personal power. You begin to understand that your emotional response to pain is yours to manage. Yes, pain is difficult, and yes, it can feel overwhelming. But when you take responsibility for how you respond to it, you empower yourself to heal, to grow, and to rise above the situation. One of the most profound ways pain can be converted into power is through the process of reflection. When something painful happens, we often focus solely on the hurt, the loss, or the disappointment. We see ourselves as victims of the situation, and the pain consumes us. But when we take responsibility for our pain, we are forced to look deeper. We ask ourselves, what can I learn from this experience? We start to recognize patterns, behaviors, and choices that may have contributed to the situation. This self-awareness is the key to growth. By understanding the lessons hidden within our pain, we can use those insights to make better choices in the future, to improve ourselves, and to avoid repeating the same mistakes. Pain also has the power to awaken a sense of purpose. When we experience hardship, we often question our values, our direction, and the meaning of our lives. It's in these moments of crisis that we have the opportunity to redefine what truly matters to us. Taking responsibility for our pain involves reevaluating what we want to achieve and how we want to live. The process of healing can become a journey toward a deeper, more meaningful existence. We may find new passions, new goals, or new causes to fight for, all because we've taken the time to reflect on our pain and use it as a source of motivation. Responsibility also means showing up for ourselves, even when we don't feel like it. It's easy to fall into self-pity or to wallow in the pain, but true empowerment comes from taking action. Instead of letting pain paralyze you, responsibility means doing the things that will help you heal. Whether it's seeking therapy, taking time for self-care, setting new boundaries, or pursuing personal growth, responsibility means showing up and doing the hard work even when you feel broken. This action is what transforms pain into power. It shows the world, and more importantly, yourself, that you are not defeated by your circumstances. You are not a passive recipient of life's hardships. You are an active participant in your own healing. When we take responsibility for our pain, we also gain a sense of resilience. Every time we choose to face our pain head-on, we build the emotional strength needed to weather future storms. We become more capable of handling life's inevitable challenges. Pain no longer feels like a threat to our well-being because we know we have the strength to overcome it. The power we gain through responsibility comes from the repeated experience of facing adversity and rising above it. Each time we confront our pain with responsibility, we fortify our inner strength, making us more prepared for whatever lies ahead. There's also an element of compassion that comes with taking responsibility for pain. When you recognize that everyone experiences pain, you can relate to others who are suffering in ways that weren't possible before. Pain can make us feel isolated, but responsibility allows us to connect with others. It gives us the ability to empathize, to share our stories, and to offer support. This creates a sense of community and shared strength. When we take responsibility for our own pain, we create space for others to do the same. We begin to realize that pain is not a sign of weakness, but a universal experience that can unite us all in our shared humanity. Ultimately, turning pain into power is about ownership and agency. It's about no longer allowing your experiences to dictate your life, but instead using those experiences to fuel your journey forward. Pain is an inevitable part of being human, but it doesn't have to define who you are or limit what you can become. Responsibility is the key that unlocks the potential hidden within the pain. By taking responsibility for how you respond to suffering, you not only regain control of your emotional state, but you also discover the strength, resilience, and wisdom that comes from embracing your pain and using it to propel yourself toward a better future. In the end, emotional detachment, responsibility, and self-evolution are all interconnected steps on the path to personal empowerment. Life is a journey, and we are constantly evolving. As we face pain, loss, and attachment, it's essential to remember that we have the power to choose how we respond. Our pain is not a weakness, but a gateway to transformation. Through emotional detachment, we create the space for growth, and by embracing responsibility, we unlock the strength to move forward not just for ourselves, but in a way that positively impacts those around us. We are not static. We are meant to evolve, to learn from our experiences, and to become the best versions of ourselves. Every challenge, every hardship, every attachment that we must release is an opportunity for growth. When we choose responsibility over victimhood, when we embrace the discomfort of change, and when we prioritize our values and purpose over short-term comfort, we reclaim our power. The road may not always be easy, but it's through these challenges that we become resilient, wise, and truly alive. So, step into the discomfort of transformation, let go of what no longer serves you, and take ownership of your path forward. You are not defined by your past, and you are certainly not defined by your pain. You are defined by the choices you make in this moment, the choice to grow, to evolve, and to step into the full power of who you are meant to be.